Hi everyone, and welcome to day 8 of the Start 1K program. Really glad you all seem to be enjoying things so far, and it's great to see the contribution that everyone's making to the Facebook group, the discussions that we're having. And I'd encourage you to continue to post, to ask questions, and get the support not only of the team, myself, Lisa, and Haley, but also of the other participants in the group. Got a great range of skills and experience in there. Anyway, on to day 8. So today we're going to talk about another acronym. Yesterday we had USP. Today we're going to have MVP. Some of you may have heard about this. It's a minimum viable product. So the concept for a minimum viable product really came about, or was popularized at least, in the software startup space. A guy called Eric Ries wrote a very popular book called The Lean Startup, and it popularized the idea that a business should start with a minimum viable product. So what that means, it's a way to test a market without spending a lot of time or a lot of money developing a business idea or a business solution even, which your customers don't want for whatever reason or isn't going to work. So the idea of an MVP is to test the market. So we've already identified who our ideal customers are. We've thought about what our USP is, and now we're going to put some ideas out there in terms of testing the market, in terms of seeing if our assumptions are correct. So the purpose of that is that by not investing a lot of time or a lot of money in the minimum viable product, it's the minimum viable version of it, there's the opportunity to pivot. We haven't got all of our eggs in one basket. So if the real world feedback we get is this doesn't seem to work, we're not getting traction, then we can pivot a little bit and, do something different. A very famous example of that is Twitter, which was originally, I believe it was podcasting software or some iteration of audio software, and they built Twitter in-house. The company built Twitter in-house as a way to communicate amongst the team, and then ended up pivoting to Twitter and became what it is. Like it or loathe it, it's certainly a much bigger platform than a podcasting solution would have been, I believe. Anyway, now, you might think that a minimum viable product, on the way I'm speaking, is only really appropriate for a software business, as for programming or developing an online solution or something like that. Now, that's not true. What we're going to try and do is take the concept of the MVP, concept of the minimum viable product, and apply it to your business. Now, today, I don't want you necessarily to produce an MVP. It's probably a little bit more work than you're going to get done in one day, and I don't want you to put a load of pressure on yourselves to do that. What I want you to do today is think about what your MVP, your minimum viable product, could be, and to post that in the group. So let's think of some examples. So I know we've got a couple of artists in the group, for instance. As an artist, you might look at, is there a way that you can, put a Facebook page together or something on Etsy showcasing your work or showcasing your custom designs, where people could pre-order them before they're actually printed or before they're even made, so you could give some examples of the type of work that you do, and then encourage people to pre-order that way. So there's not a lot of cost in terms of doing that. An example from my own life. My wife, I helped my wife start a business probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. Actually, more than that, probably about 8 years ago now. And she does kids parties, Lego parties. They are. Now, the way that we did that was we created a very simple Facebook page. They were even more rudimentary at the time. Simple Facebook page, and we created some Facebook posts with some decent imagery and some text about what the children's parties were. And we essentially set up an email and a PayPal link, and we started taking bookings. Much to my wife's distress, we started taking bookings for parties before we actually bought any Lego. And in fact, what we did was we used the deposits from the party bookings, from our minimum viable product. We used the deposits that customers had paid to buy our initial Lego stock, essentially, which we then used to deliver the parties. And that was deliberately done that way. It was done as an experiment, I wanted to make sure that the stuff I talk about every day actually worked, in real terms. And it did. And it worked very, very well. And, that business is still going today. And I've seen it work in many, many other industries and many other areas. So the most famous ones, you've got the likes of Dropbox that you may have heard of, may even use. Google's Gmail was built in a day, apparently. You've got there's Groupon. Groupon's a really good example, actually. So the way the Groupon worked was they didn't have the coding skills in house or anything like that. So they built a very simple WordPress site, which pretty much anybody can do. A little bit of technical skills, but nothing that anybody can't learn. And they launched Groupon, finding the deals and posting them manually on this WordPress site that they built themselves before they built it into what it was at the time, which became one of the fastest growing businesses of all time, So there's lots of different ways that you can build an MVP. So what I want you to think about, because I'm rabbiting on a bit, what I want you to think about is what your MVP could look like. Could it be a simple introductory video, which you could post online, on Facebook, on Instagram, etc., whereby you encourage people to drop you a message or an email to sort of pre-order your product, if that's something that you could potentially do. Or to pre-book. I know we've got some complimentary therapists in the group as well. You could pre-book sessions. So if you're not set up yet to deliver, then you can pre-book sessions in advance of, it might be 2 months time, it might be 2 weeks time, it might even be 6 weeks time, where you can pre-book people into that time slot to allow you to prepare and to get more bookings in and perhaps take deposits like we did, or you can do what's called the sort of Wizard of Oz approach, which is similar in a way to what Groupon did, which is very much about doing a manual service that ultimately will become an automated service. So, what they were doing, they might have been finding the deals by, essentially knocking on doors, ringing customers up and finding customers in that way. Not something that you would do at scale. But remember, I've talked about this before. The stuff that you do now at the early stages of your business is not the stuff that you're going to do at scale. So what you really want to be doing is talking to customers, finding out what they need and understanding their needs. And that's what the minimum viable product allows you to do. It allows you to start having some real interaction with customers, to test your assumptions that we're making based on the market research, based on the USP that we've talked about. So don't worry about creating this, but I want you to post in the group and get some feedback about what your idea for what an MVP could be. So a bit of a tough one today. You need to get your thinking caps on a little bit, and I'm really excited to see what people come up with. Cheers.